Hey guys, just got done watching a video, Preterist video, and some points are made in this video that they just blow my mind. I don't understand. Uh, I don't know. I wrote down many of the main points, and the last few are actually um, some of the most condemning. The first point this person makes is he says that futurism, and like I said, I don't consider myself what is called a pure futurist, but anyway, because we already talked about it, futurism and preterism were both invented for a reason. They weren't organic movements in Bible translations. They were created under a precedent, and that was to get the Catholic Church out of trouble. But it says he says it makes the New Testament useless, and I would just counter and say it makes the old preterism makes the Old Testament useless. And that's my point about preterism, is it doesn't make sense of all of the evidence. It's like anything. It's like what I call pure futurism, pure historicism, pure idealism, pure mysticism, pure preterism. They all do the same thing. They come short of taking into account all of the biblical text, all of them. Um, Two, the apostles thought they were living in the last days, and so what would be my answer to that? That really, imminence and eminence are two different things, first of all, and no one knew when the last day was coming, and it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility to me that if they met Jesus and they went through all this stuff with him, that they thought, well, since this happened, the next thing is going to happen rather quickly. That in of itself is not an argument. It doesn't matter if they were right or wrong, if they perceived that the time would be, long before. And like I said, we've already disproven the some of you standing here passages with the transfiguration, and by confirming that with Second Peter. And these are the kind of things they will never talk about. They'll just say, well, okay, you got me on that one, but they won't actually say it. And once again, the points that I bring up on my videos, you can watch. They've never been addressed. um, Three, makes the books useless. Not at all. Not if you know what you're looking for, number one. Number two, Paul had no idea he was writing scripture. He had no idea. So to interpret it in what I would call a gospel light is not quite the same thing. Um, for preterism is self-evident, and once again, by ignoring everything in the Old Testament and anything that doesn't agree with it, it just flat out ignores it altogether, like it doesn't exist. Um, Five, heaven and earth, the cosmos, and the law. Okay, this is the one where he really steps in it, because you do have a serious problem here, and this is what I'm talking about. As far as he makes the statement that um, the harder people push against preterism, the more they rape their theology. Um, so that's some pretty heavy accusations. And what he does is he goes to Matthew, where he says, "Not one jot nor tittle shall pass from the law until all is fulfilled." And he says this all takes place in 70 AD. Well, you got a serious problem then with Paul and Peter. Okay, and this is what the problem is. This is not understanding Judaism as a whole. Um, to me, what Paul was doing was making what was called God-fearers, people basically under the Noahide type law system, and people that weren't quite proselytes, equal to Jews in their membership into salvation. Um, Another point that is made by him too, I wanted to address, was national Israel was destroyed. So why did God, if that was the sign that we should move on, then why is national Israel back? It, these arguments just don't make any sense. But sticking to this law argument in particular, if you're going to translate Jesus's words that way and say this is how it has to be, I would simply point this out. Number one, like I said, Paul, no matter, we can argue back and forth because I have a feeling that's what people were trying to do, but let's just look at circumcision. Paul plainly says it, okay? He does away with circumcision. He doesn't just do away with it. He says Jesus is of no effect to you if you do. So we have one teaching. Wait a second. I thought not one jot nor tittle. But Paul, before 70 AD, So Paul must be a false prophet. Peter seeing the sheep and the food laws. Well, he can't change a jot and a tittle. Peter must be a false prophet. Divorce was legal, and Jesus came messing with the divorce laws. I guess Jesus is a false prophet. You see the flimsiness of this argument? It doesn't hold up at all. And I mean at all. The problem with all of this is that the simple point of it is that Paul changed jots and tittles. Okay, there's no doubt about that. And if you're going to say that no jot nor tittle could be changed until 70 AD, then you have to do something with Paul. And that's just a fact of the matter. Paul and James, Paul and Barnabas, Paul and Peter all bumped heads. And I'm going to tell you, James was what was called the party to circumcision. And I think the Dead Sea Scrolls do point that out. So there's more to it than this. And that's the problem with preterism. This oversimplification of everything makes it fall all utterly short. But in Judaism, it was plainly understood. You had Jews, you had converts, proselytes, God-fearers, and even they were under a type of a law. And what does James do? He issues a commandment to the Gentiles encompassing several laws that pretty much mirror what we would call the Noahide laws of its time. So, and think about this, in case you're wondering, when did we come? We had come to Jerusalem. The brothers received us gladly. On the following day, Paul went in with us to James, and all the elders were present. After greeting him, he related one by one the things God had done among the Gentiles through his ministry. And when they heard it, they glorified God, and they said to him, "You see, brother, how many thousands there are among the Jews of those who have believed. They are zealous for the Torah." In law, the Torah means guidance and teaching. Okay, law is not really necessarily the best word for it. And they have been told that you teach all the Jews who are among the Gentiles to forsake Moses, telling them not to circumcise their children or walk according to their customs. What then is to be done? They will certainly hear you or hear. And he makes them take the Nazirite oath, which will actually involve a sacrifice. And Paul is to sponsor this. So Paul's still going with the law, but he does away with circumcision. But this was before with 70 AD. This is hypocrites, okay? This preterist position. And then look at what James says, and I'm going to point out something to you in James. What does it say? James 1. James, a servant of God and the Lord of Jesus Christ, to the 12 tribes in the dispersion. So he's writing to Jews in this letter. And what does he go on to say? If you really fulfill the royal law, the Torah, according to the scripture, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. You are doing well. So this is a Torah teaching. Can you throw that out now? Can you say you don't need to love your neighbor as you love yourself? But if you show partiality, you are committing sin and are convicted by the law as transgressors. For whoever keeps the whole law but fails in one point, whoever keeps the whole Torah but fails in one point, has become accountable for all of it. For he who said, do not commit adultery, also said, do not murder. If you do not commit adultery, but do murder, you have become a transgressor of the Torah. So speak and act as those who are going to be judged under the law of liberty. For judgment is without mercy to one who has shown no mercy. Mercy triumphs over judgment, which is taught in the Torah. What good is it, my brothers, if someone says he has faith but does not have works? Can faith save him? If a brother or sister is poorly clothed or lacking in daily food, and one of them says to you, "Go in peace and be warmed and filled," without giving him the things he needs for the body, what good is that? So also faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead. This is also found in the Torah. That's the teaching of justice. Injustice to God, one starving and one being rich, is considered injustice. But someone shall say, "You have faith and I have works. Show me your faith apart from your works, and I will show you my faith by my works. You believe that God is one, and you do well. The demons do well and shudder. Foolish person." I don't want to drag this on, but he's talking about works of the Torah. That's what he's talking about. Everything he mentions here comes straight out of the Torah. James was a Torah-keeping Jew, a circumcision-keeping Jew at that. So when we talk about ignoring things, the preterists ignore some massive pieces of evidence. Like I said, the Dead Sea Scrolls, I think, are shedding light on this. But to say that you can't change a jot or tittle, you, Jesus, Paul, Peter, they all have a problem then. It means that you're not interpreting it correctly, or you got some false prophets or false writings in your so-called inspired canon. But let's talk about some things about being consistent and taking things literally. Okay, let's talk about Ecclesiastes 3:14. I know that whatsoever God does, it shall be forever, for nothing can be put to it, nor anything taken from it. For God does it, that men should fear before him that which has been shown and that which has been already been. God requires that which is past. What God does, it shall be forever. Nothing can be put on it and nothing can be taken away from it. Then you look at Matthew 5. Think that I have not come to destroy the law or the prophets. I came not to destroy, but to fulfill. For verily I say to you, till heaven and earth pass away, not one jot nor wise tittle shall pass from the law till all be fulfilled. Whoever should break one of the least of these commandments and shall teach men to do so, he shall be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. But whosoever shall do and teach them, the same shall be called the great in the kingdom of heaven. And I'll tell you this till heaven and earth pass away statement, it's it's not about heaven and earth passing away. It's the fact that it's probably never going to happen. And I said this in a video, I don't know, about a month ago, and people just ignore stuff like this. So let's throw some biblical passages on it. The earth is going to be renewed. You know that he's saying that the earth will end and heaven will cease before this law, this Torah, and you like to call it the law, but before this Torah will be. Let's go to Ecclesiastes 1:4. One generation passes away and another generation comes, but the earth abides forever. Luke 16:17. And it is easier for heaven and earth to pass than one tittle of the law to fail. Whoever puts away his wife and marries another commits adultery, and whoever marries her commits adultery. I've already addressed that problem with the Hebrew Matthew. But here we see the Bible unequivocally saying that the earth will abide forever. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words will not pass away. So these are all just statements saying that it's just like they do with Isaiah 65:15. It has nothing to do, it's not understanding how all this works when you start to look in it. And the way the Torah was set up, the way that you had different tiers of people who could embrace the God of Israel. We're trying to make them all the same. And that's the byproduct of this spiritual Israel, spiritual Jew, spiritual death. It's the byproduct of these idiotic doctrines, okay? James was a lawkeeper. Don't ever forget that. If Paul changed one commandment in the law under your understanding before 70 AD, that means Paul is a false prophet. Do you understand? Is that clear? You can't have it both ways, which is exactly what you're doing. 2 Kings 17 says, and the statutes and the ordinances and the Torah and the commandment which he wrote for you, you shall observe and do them evermore. You shall not fear other gods. Psalms 117:2. For his merciful kindness is great towards us, and the truth of Yahweh endures forever. Psalms 118:142. Thy righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and thy Torah is the truth. Psalms 119:150. They draw nigh that follow after mischief, and far from your law. You are near, O Yahweh, and all your commandments are truth. Concerning your testimonies, I have known of old that you have founded them forever. Psalms 100. For Yahweh is good, his mercy is everlasting, and his truth endures to all generations. Psalms 117. For his merciful kindness is great towards us, but the truth of Yahweh endures forever. Psalms 146:5. Happy is he that has the God of Jacob as his help, whose hope is in Yahweh his God, which made heaven and earth and the sea and all things therein, which keeps truth forever. Psalms 111:7. The works of his hands are verity and judgment, and his commandments are sure. They stand fast forever and are done in truth and uprightness. He sent redemption unto his people. He has commanded his covenant forever. Holy and reverend is his name. The fear of Yahweh is the beginning of wisdom. A good understanding have all they that do his commandments. His praise endures forever. Psalms 119:89. Forever, O Yahweh, thy word is settled in heaven. Psalms 119:144. The righteousness of thy testimonies is everlasting. Psalms 119:152. Concerning thy testimony, I have known of old that thou hast founded them forever. Psalms 119:160. The word is true from the beginning, and every one of thy righteous judgments endures forever. Ecclesiastes 3:14. I know that whatsoever God does, it shall be forever. Ecclesiastes 3:14. I know that whatever God does, it shall be forever. Excuse me. Yeah, I got that one printed twice apparently. Isaiah 51. Lift up your eyes to heavens and look upon the earth, for the heavens shall vanish away like smoke, and the earth shall wax old like a garment, and they will die in like manner. But my salvation shall be forever and ever. My righteousness shall not be abolished. Hearken unto me, ye that know righteousness, the people in whose heart is my Torah. Fear ye not the reproach of men. His covenants. 1 Chronicles 16. O you seed of Israel, his servant, ye children of Jacob, his chosen ones. He is Yahweh our God. His judgments are all in the earth. Be ye mindful always of his covenant, the word which he commanded to 1,000 generations, even to the covenant which he made with Abraham, and of his oath unto Isaac. And he has confirmed the same, to Jacob for a law, and to Israel for an everlasting covenant. So Israel has an everlasting covenant. I guess we don't take words seriously. Psalms 89, my covenant will I not break, no alter the thing. This is gone out of my lips. But I guess it's the preterist who only takes these words seriously. Deuteronomy 7:9. Know therefore that Yahweh thy God, he is God, he is a faithful God, which keeps covenant and mercy with them that love him and keep his commandments to 1,000 generations. Genesis 17:7. And I will establish my covenant between me and thee and thy seed after thee in the generations for an everlasting covenant, to be a God unto thee. And if you want to look at even the feasts of the Torah, Exodus 12:17 through 24, Luke 23:13 through 20, 1 Corinthians 11:23 through 27, Sabbaths, Exodus 31 and Leviticus 3. I don't need to go through all of this. Ownership of the land of Israel. Leviticus 25:23. The land shall not be sold forever, for the land is mine, for ye are strangers and sojourners with me in my land. So, I don't know. I mean, I guess we are just not taking any of these things seriously. But like I said, all the points to me were not really that dramatic, but the last one about the Jots and the Tittles and the law passing away, I think he really stepped in it. It's you got to look at Paul, you have to look at Peter, you have to look at what's actually going on, and you have to understand how the Hebrew people viewed non-Jews in the different spectrums that you could find yourself in as a non-Jew at the time. James was a lawkeeper. Period. End of discussion. Never taught anything else. That was James's way. Paul speaking to the Gentiles, you're really putting yourself in a screw bag right there, because if you have him saying, well, he said the stuff to Gentiles, so it was okay. Okay, so you're saying that nothing really changed as far as Torah keeping to a Gentile, because you always had that choice from the beginning: God-fearer, proselyte, or full-on convert. There was just things that people think that proselytes were converts, but it doesn't seem to be the whole case with proselytes. There seemed to be even a distinction with them. But I don't know. I think I've gone on long enough. I think I've proved my point. Um, with this whole heaven and earth will pass away thing, there's no way around it. And like I said, what I think Jesus is saying there, I don't think he's saying that when heaven and earth pass away, the law will be passed. I think he's saying the earth and heaven will die before this Torah becomes untrue, before this teaching. These are God's ordinances and commands. And even within that system, it was delegated between the people of Israel and the people who were not of Israel. It's been that way from the beginning. And that's it. I'm going to stop. Now, you think about that. Heaven and earth have to pass away, 70 AD. Then you got Paul being lawless, teaching lawlessness before 70 AD. So he's a false prophet. He's got to go. He wasn't writing scripture. He was writing letters to churches. Peter gets shown by Jesus to eat foods that are unclean before 70 AD. Do you see how ridiculous this is? And you go back through all those Old Testament passages I just talked about. Do we take any of those literally? His everlasting covenant with Israel? I guess that doesn't mean everlasting. Jesus does not get to change Bible prophecy. I don't know what it is with people. He fulfills Bible prophecy. There's a huge difference between changing your Father's words and fulfilling your Father's words. And this is why Jewish people and believers in Messiah cannot get along until this day. Because of this understanding that is really, it falls apart. As soon as you push on it, it falls apart. God bless.